Cheap. That was the word he used. Not loving, not loyal, but cheap. Alara stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by New York's elite, while her husband Adrian laughed at her dress, holding the waist of another woman. He thought he was the most powerful man in the room. He thought Alara was just a nobody from the countryside who should be grateful for his crumbs. But Adrian made a fatal miscalculation that night. He didn't know that the old man Alara called on Sundays wasn't a farmer. He didn't know that the helicopters suddenly swarming the airspace weren't for the politicians. He shamed her for her simplicity, unaware that the man walking through those doors, the man whose ring everyone was terrified to kiss, was coming for her. And when an emperor enters the room, even billionaires kneel. The morning of their 3rd anniversary did not begin with kisses or breakfast in bed. It began with the sharp, rhythmic clicking of Adrian Vance's polished Oxford shoes against the Italian marble floors of their Manhattan penthouse. Alara Vance sat at the edge of the sprawling mahogany dining table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. She wasn't drinking it. She was just holding it, trying to siphon some warmth into her cold fingers. She wore a simple beige cardigan over a white cotton sundress, clothes she had owned since before she married Adrian. They were clean, comfortable, and to Adrian utterly offensive. "Are you going to wear that tonight?" The voice cut through the silence like a serrated knife. Adrian stood by the floor-to-ceiling window adjusting his silk tie. He didn't look at her. He was looking at his reflection in the glass, admiring the cut of his $5,000 Tom Ford suit. Alara looked down at her dress. "It's the dress I wore on our first date, Adrian. I thought it would be sentimental." Adrian turned then, his face contorted in a sneer that had become all too familiar over the last year. He was a handsome man with sharp jawlines and piercing blue eyes that had once looked at her with fascination. Now they only held contempt. As the CEO of Vance Global, a logistics empire he had inherited and aggressively expanded, Adrian had become obsessed with image. And Alara, sweet, soft-spoken Alara who preferred gardening to galas, was damaging his brand. "Sentimental," Adrian scoffed, walking over to the table and picking up an apple, only to inspect it and set it back down with disdain. "Alara, tonight is the unsuspecting merger gala at the Pierre. The board of directors will be there. Investors from Dubai are flying in. And you want to show up looking like a breathless schoolteacher from Nebraska." "I am a teacher, Adrian," she said softly. "Or I was, until you made me quit." "I made you quit so you could focus on being a wife befitting my station," he snapped. He reached into his jacket pocket and tossed a black American Express Centurion card onto the table. It slid across the wood and hit her mug with a dull clink. "Go to 5th Avenue, he commanded. "Buy something that screams money. I don't care if it's Dior, Chanel, or customized silk. Just fix yourself. I can't have the press thinking my business is failing because my wife dresses like she clips coupons." Alara stared at the heavy black card. "Adrian, it's our anniversary. I wrote you a letter. I cooked your favorite—" "I don't have time for letters, Alara, grow up." He checked his Patek Philippe watch, grimacing. "I'm sending the driver to pick you up at 7. Do not embarrass me. If you show up looking like a peasant, you can take a cab back to that studio apartment I found you in." He didn't wait for a response. He didn't kiss her goodbye. He simply grabbed his briefcase and marched out the door. The heavy thud of the penthouse door closing echoed through the empty, cold luxury of the apartment. Alara sat there for a long time. She didn't touch the credit card. Instead, she stood up and walked to the window looking out over Central Park. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small, worn locket. Inside was a picture of a stern-looking man with a thick gray beard and eyes that matched hers, violet and piercing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an international number, code +43. She answered, her voice trembling. "Hello, grandfather." "He forgot the date again, didn't he, Liebling?" The voice on the other end was rough like gravel grinding against stone, but filled with an intense protective warmth. "He's busy, grandfather. He has a big merger." "Busy?" the old man scoffed. The sound was terrifying even over the phone. A man is never too busy for his empress. You have played this game of commoner long enough, Alara. 3 years. I gave you 3 years to find this true love you claimed existed outside our walls. All I see is a man who treats a diamond like a piece of coal. I love him, Alara whispered through the words felt like ash in her mouth. He's just stressed. He is a fool, the old man growled. I am in the city, Alara. Alara's heart stopped. What? You're in New York. You can't be. The security protocols alone. I am here for a summit at the UN, but I am clearing my schedule for tonight. I wish to see this husband of yours. I wish to see if he is worthy of the air you breathe. Grandfather, please, Alara begged. Don't cause a scene. He doesn't know. Nobody knows. That is the problem, child. He thinks you are weak because you are kind. Tonight I will be at the Pierre. No! Alara cried out. He'll be terrified. Please let me handle tonight. If he's still cruel, then I'll tell him. There was a long silence on the line. Finally, the old man sighed. One night, but remember, Alara, you are of the house of Habsburg-Lorraine, a lineage that commanded empires while his ancestors were still herding sheep. Do not lower your head for him. The line clicked dead. Alara looked at the black credit card on the table. She picked it up and dropped it into the trash can. She wouldn't buy a dress with his money. She would wear something of her own. Something that told the truth even if Adrian was too blind to read it. The Pierre Hotel was glowing with golden light. A red carpet had been rolled out, flanked by paparazzi shouting names of the city's most influential figures. Limousines lined up like shiny black beetles. When the town car pulled up, Adrian was already waiting at the top of the stairs. He looked impeccable, a statue of modern success. But the moment Alara stepped out of the car, his face dropped. She had not gone to Chanel. She had not gone to Dior. Alara was wearing a dress of deep midnight blue velvet. It was high-necked, long-sleeved, and covered her completely, fitting her slender frame with modest elegance. It was vintage, clearly from another era, with no logos, no flash, and no skin showing. Around her neck she wore a simple silver chain with a heavy, intricate signet ring hanging from it as a pendant. To the untrained eye, she looked conservative, almost dowdy compared to the women in sheer glitter gowns. But to a historian, the dress was a masterpiece of 1920s royal tailoring, and the ring around her neck bore a crest that had once stamped laws into existence for half of Europe. Adrian stormed down the stairs, grabbing her arm tightly, too tightly. "What is this?" he hissed, dragging her away from the cameras. "I told you to buy a dress. A real dress. You look like a librarian attending a funeral." "I look like myself, Adrian," Alara said, her voice steady for the first time that day. "And this dress is worth more than you think." "It's worthless trash," he spat. "Just like your stubbornness. Get inside and stay in the corner. Do not talk to the investors. Do not talk to the press. And for God's sake, tuck that ugly ring into your dress. It looks like something you got out of a cereal box." He shoved her lightly toward the entrance. Alara stumbled but caught herself. She felt tears pricking her eyes, but she remembered her grandfather's voice. "Do not lower your head." She walked into the ballroom. It was a sea of excess. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the ceiling. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters moved with trays of champagne and caviar. Adrian immediately abandoned her, making a beeline for a group of men in gray suits, the investors from Dubai. Alara found a quiet spot near a pillar, clutching a glass of sparkling water. "Well, well, if it isn't the little charity case." Alara stiffened. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Camilla St. James. Camilla was everything Alara wasn't. Tall, statuesque, and ruthless. She was the daughter of a real estate mogul and had been Adrian's business partner for years. Rumors had swirled about them for months, rumors Alara tried to ignore. Camilla was wearing a dress that was barely there, strips of red silk held together by diamonds. "Hello, Camilla," Alara said quietly. Camilla stepped closer, invading Alara's personal space. She smelled of expensive perfume and malice. "Adrian is so patient with you. I told him he should have left you at home. You stick out like a sore thumb, darling. Look at everyone else." She gestured to the room. "Diamond silk power. And you look like you're waiting for the bus." "I'm his wife, Camilla," Alara said, lifting her chin. Camilla laughed, a cold tinkling sound. "For now. But haven't you noticed? He doesn't look at you. He doesn't talk about you. You're a placeholder, Alara. He needed a sweet, simple girl to make him look stable for the IPO. But now the company is public. He needs a queen, not a maid." Before Alara could respond, the music stopped. The room fell silent as Adrian walked up to the microphone on the stage. He beamed the picture of charisma. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian's voice boomed, "thank you for joining us to celebrate the merger of Vance Global and Stratos Industries. This is a night of excellence, a night where we shed the old weight and embrace the future." He raised his glass. "To perfection." "To perfection!" the crowd roared. Adrian stepped off the stage, basking in the applause. He walked straight toward Camilla, who was standing 5 feet away from Alara. He took Camilla's hand and kissed it right there in front of everyone. Alara felt the room spin. It was a public declaration. He was humiliating her. Then Adrian turned and saw Alara standing there. His smile vanished. He had had a few drinks and the arrogance was leaking out of him unchecked. He gestured for the room to quiet down, a cruel glint in his eye. "You know," Adrian said loudly, his voice carrying over the hush, "my wife Alara is here somewhere." He pointed a finger at her. The spotlight swung, blinding her. "There she is." Adrian chuckled. "Look at her. I gave her my black card today. I told her, buy the most beautiful dress in New York. And she shows up in that. Some old rag she probably found in a thrift store." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nervous laughter, but laughter nonetheless. "It's charming, really," Adrian continued, walking toward her, swirling his scotch. "She's so simple. She doesn't understand our world. She thinks she can save pennies while I make millions. It's pathetic, honestly. Sometimes I wonder if she even knows how to read the price tags." Alara's face burned. The humiliation was physical, a heavy weight crushing her chest. "Adrian, stop," she whispered. "Stop," Adrian sneered. "Why are you embarrassed? You should be. You're a liability, Alara. Look at Camilla." He pulled Camilla to his side. "This is what a woman of status looks like. You're just a mistake I made when I was young and sentimental." The room was deadly silent now. This went beyond teasing. It was verbal abuse. But nobody moved. Nobody stood up for her. They were all afraid of Adrian's power. "I think," Adrian said, his voice dropping to a cruel whisper that the microphone still caught, "that it's time you went home, Alara. Permanently. I'll have the lawyer send the papers to your parents' farm. Maybe you can use the alimony to buy a new tractor." Alara's hand went to the signet ring around her neck. She gripped it so hard the metal bit into her palm. She took a breath, preparing to speak, preparing to finally defend herself. But she didn't have to. The double doors at the far end of the ballroom didn't just open. They were thrown open with a force that rattled the crystals in the chandeliers. A sudden, sharp silence fell over the room, heavier than the one Adrian had commanded. 6 men walked in. They were not hotel security. They were not NYPD. They were wearing dark, tailored tactical suits with earpieces moving with the lethal precision of special forces. They fanned out instantly, securing the perimeter of the room. Adrian frowned, annoyed. "What is this? Who authorized this?" He stepped forward, ready to berate the intruders. "Excuse me. This is a private event." The soldiers ignored him. They stood like statues, hands clasped behind their backs, eyes scanning the crowd for threats. Then a man walked through the center of the formation. He was old, perhaps in his late 70s, but he walked with a posture that made him seem 7 feet tall. He wore a tuxedo, but across his chest was a sash of royal purple silk, pinned with medals that no one in the room recognized except for the history buffs whose faces drained of color. He leaned heavily on a cane topped with a solid gold eagle, its eyes made of rubies. Behind him trailed 2 assistants carrying a velvet cushion. The atmosphere in the room shifted from confusion to terror. There was an aura around the old man, a suffocating pressure of absolute authority. Adrian, however, was too arrogant to feel it. He saw an old man interrupting his power play. "Hey!" Adrian shouted, stepping off the podium and marching toward the intruder. "I don't know who you think you are crashing the Vance Gala, but you have 5 seconds to leave before I have you thrown out on the street." The old man didn't stop. He didn't even look at Adrian. He walked straight past the billionaire as if he were a ghost. Adrian, furious at being ignored, reached out to grab the old man's shoulder. "I'm talking to you, old Crack." Before Adrian's hand could make contact, one of the security guards moved with blurring speed. He intercepted Adrian's wrist, twisting it painfully behind his back. Adrian yelped, dropping to his knees. "Let him go!" Camilla shrieked. "Silence!" the old man said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. His voice was deep, resonant, and carried the weight of mountains. The guard released Adrian, shoving him to the floor. Adrian scrambled up, red-faced and sputtering. "Do you know who I am? I am Adrian Vance. I own half this city." The old man finally stopped. He turned slowly to face Adrian. His eyes were violet, identical to Alara's. "You own nothing," the old man said, his accent thick with European aristocracy. "You are a boy playing with coins in a sandbox." He turned away from Adrian and looked across the room. His hard expression softened instantly. "Alara," he said gently. The crowd gasped. All eyes snapped to the woman in the thrift store dress. Alara let go of her necklace. She stepped forward, her head high, the tears in her eyes drying up as the blood of her ancestors took over. She walked past the stunned investors, past the trembling Camilla, past her kneeling husband. She stopped in front of the old man and curtsied, not a clumsy bow, but a perfect courtly curtsy that one only learns from birth. "Grandfather," she said. The old man handed his cane to an assistant and opened his arms. Alara stepped into them, burying her face in his shoulder. "I told you," the old man whispered into her hair loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "I told you he was not worthy of the House of von Adler." A murmur went through the room like a wildfire. "Von Adler," someone whispered. "Wait, the Grand Duke Stefan von Adler, the Iron Eagle of Austria. The man who owns the banks that Vance Global borrows from. That means she's not a farm girl." Adrian stood up, his face pale as a sheet. "Grandfather Alara, what is going on?" The Grand Duke released Alara and turned back to Adrian. The look of warmth was gone, replaced by a glacial rage. He gestured to his assistant, who brought the velvet cushion forward. On it sat a tiara, diamonds and sapphires that caught the light so intensely it hurt to look at them. It was the Romanov sapphire crown thought to be lost to history. "You called my granddaughter's dress a rag," the Duke said, his voice echoing in the silent hall. "You mocked her simplicity. You offered her a credit card with a limit lower than the cost of my morning coffee." He picked up the tiara and placed it gently on Alara's head. It fit perfectly. "You publicly shamed Her Serene Highness, Princess Alara von Adler-Habsburg," the Duke thundered. "And for that, Mr. Vance, I am going to buy your company, burn it to the ground, and sow salt into the earth where it stood." The silence in the ballroom was broken only by the frantic tapping of smartphones. Every guest, every waiter, every socialite was recording. The hashtag Vance Gala was already trending, but not for the reasons Adrian had paid his PR team thousands of dollars to ensure. Adrian stood frozen, his eyes darting between the tiara on Alara's head and the terrifying old man leaning on the cane. His mind was racing, trying to find an angle, a leverage point. He was a businessman. He solved problems. This was just a negotiation. Grand Duke Stefan. Adrian stammered, his voice cracking. He tried to straighten his jacket to regain some semblance of dignity. Sir, surely there is a misunderstanding. I didn't know. Alara never told me. Because you never asked, Alara said softly. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the pin-drop silence it carried like a bell. In 3 years, Adrian, you never asked about my childhood. You never asked about the farm in Austria. You assumed because I didn't wear diamonds I didn't have them. I was trying to build a future for us. Adrian shouted, his temper fraying. I worked 18-hour days, and you hid this. You hid billions. You didn't marry a bank account, Adrian? The Grand Duke interjected, his voice dripping with disdain. You married a woman, and you failed her. Stefan turned to the group of men in gray suits, the investors from Dubai that Adrian had been courting all night. They were standing rigidly, their faces pale. Mr. Al-Fayed, the Duke said, nodding to the lead investor. I trust your firm Stratus Industries has examined the financials of Vance Global. Mr. Al-Fayed swallowed hard. He stepped forward, ignoring Adrian entirely, and bowed deeply to the Duke. Your Highness, we were unaware of the family connection. We apologize profusely. Wait, why are you apologizing to him? Adrian demanded. We have a deal. We signed the letter of intent this morning. Mr. Al-Fayed turned to Adrian, his eyes cold. The letter of intent is void, Mr. Vance. Stratus Industries is a subsidiary of Adler Holdings. We are owned by the Grand Duke's private equity firm. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. What? I own the company you are trying to merge with, the Duke said simply. I sent them here to test you, to see if your business acumen matched your arrogance. It seems you are mediocre at both. The Duke snapped his fingers. A man in a sharp pinstripe suit, Alara recognized him as Herr Muller. Her grandfather's personal attorney stepped forward with a sleek tablet. Mr. Vance, Muller said, his voice monotone and efficient. As of 10 minutes ago, the Bank Privé in Zurich has called in your operational loans due to a breach of the character clause in your contract. You are currently in default. You can't do that, Adrian screamed. That's illegal. I have rights. You have debt, Muller corrected. Variable rate debt, which the Grand Duke has just purchased. Effectively, sir, you are now trespassing on company property. Adrian looked around the room for support. He looked at the board members he had handpicked. They were all looking at their shoes or furiously typing resignation emails on their phones. He looked at Camilla. Camilla St. James, the woman who had mocked Alara minutes ago, was slowly backing away. When Adrian's desperate eyes locked onto hers, she flinched. Camilla, Adrian pleaded. Tell them about the projections. Camilla straightened up, smoothing her red silk dress. She looked at the Duke, then at Alara, calculating the odds. I was just an employee, Your Highness, she said, her voice trembling. I told Adrian he was being too harsh. I tried to stop him. Alara let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound devoid of humor. She stepped toward Camilla. The tiara on her head caught the chandelier light, casting a prism of rainbows across her face. You tried to stop him? Alara asked. By telling me I looked like I was waiting for a bus. Camilla paled. Alara, darling, it was just banter. You know how stressful these events are. I do, Alara said. That's why I'm firing you. You can't fire me. Camilla scoffed, regaining a sliver of her confidence. I don't work for you. I work for Vance Global. And Vance Global, the Grand Duke rumbled, is about to undergo a hostile restructuring. If my granddaughter says you are fired, Ms. St. James, I suggest you start updating your LinkedIn profile. Though I doubt anyone in New York will hire you once I make a few phone calls. Camilla's mask of sophistication crumbled. She looked at Adrian with pure hatred. "You idiot," she hissed at him. "You ruined everything." She turned on her heel and fled the ballroom, the click of her heels sounding like gunfire in the quiet room. Elara turned back to Adrian. He looked small now, the titan of industry. The man who had controlled every aspect of her life, what she ate, what she wore, who she spoke to, was just a man in a rented room, drowning in debt. "I loved you, Adrian," Elara said. "I loved you because you were driven. I thought you were building something for us, but you were just building a mirror to look at yourself." She reached up and unclasped the signet ring from her necklace. She held it out to him. "You wanted me to tuck this away," she said, "because you thought it was cheap. This ring bears the seal of the Order of the Golden Fleece. It has been in my family for 600 years. It is worth more than this entire hotel." She dropped the ring into his open, trembling hand. "Keep it," she said. "You're going to need the money for a lawyer." "Elara, wait." Adrian choked out, reaching for her. "Please, we can fix this. I'll change. I swear to God I'll change." Elara didn't flinch. She turned to her grandfather. "I'm ready to go home now." The Grand Duke nodded. He offered Elara his arm. As they walked out, the 6 tactical guards formed a phalanx around them. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one dared to speak. No one dared to breathe. As they reached the double doors, Elara paused and looked back one last time. Adrian was on his knees in the middle of the empty dance floor, clutching the ring, while the waiters began to clear the champagne glasses around him. She felt a pang of sadness, but it wasn't for him. It was for the girl who had believed in fairy tales. That girl was gone. The princess had returned. The penthouse of the Mandarin Oriental had been commandeered entirely for the Grand Duke's stay. It was a fortress of luxury high above the smog and noise of Manhattan. Elara sat on a velvet sofa, staring out at the skyline. She was still wearing the blue velvet dress, but the tiara had been placed back in its secure case. A tray of tea, real tea, a rare blend from the Himalayan foothills that her grandfather favored, sat untouched on the table. "You were magnificent," the Grand Duke said. He was sitting in a leather armchair opposite her, reading a dossier. "Cruel, perhaps, but necessary. The Vances of the world only understand the boot." "I didn't want to destroy him, grandfather," Elara whispered. "I just wanted him to see me." "He saw you," Stefan said, closing the folder. "He saw an asset he had undervalued. That is all men like him see. Do not waste tears on a ledger sheet, Elara." Elara sighed. "So what happens now?" "Do I go back to Austria? Do I attend balls and cut ribbons?" "You are a Habsburg," Stefan said, his eyes narrowing. "We do not run away. We conquer. You will stay in New York. You will take over the charitable foundation of the family. You will show this city what real class looks like. And," he paused, a mischievous glint in his eye, "you will oversee the liquidation of Vance Global." "Grandfather, no," Elara said, shaking her head. "I can't be the one to sign the papers. It's vindictive." "It is justice," Stefan insisted. "But we can discuss business tomorrow. Tonight you rest." He stood up and kissed her forehead. "I missed you, little bird. The castle has been too quiet without your piano playing." "I haven't played in years," Elara admitted. "Adrian said it was too loud when he was working." Stefan's face darkened, a flash of that terrifying anger returning. "Then tomorrow we buy a Steinway. Sleep well, Elara." Across the city, the scene was very different. Adrian Vance sat in his penthouse, or what used to be his penthouse. The lights were off. The electricity had been cut remotely an hour ago. He was sitting on the floor by the window, illuminated only by the streetlights below. His phone had been ringing non-stop for 2 hours. Reporters, creditors, board members. He had smashed it against the wall in a fit of rage. Now it lay in pieces on the expensive rug. He held the signet ring Elara had thrown at him. It was heavy gold and ancient. He had thought it was junk. He had thought she was junk. How could I be so stupid, he thought. The way she spoke French fluently, the way she knew which fork to use at the darkest corner table of the most exclusive restaurants, the way she never cared about money. He had mistaken breeding for weakness. He stood up stumbling in the dark. He needed a drink. He went to the liquor cabinet, but it was locked. He remembered he had installed a biometric lock that connected to the home security system, which was now offline. "Damn it!" he screamed, kicking the cabinet. He needed to think. He needed a plan. He was Adrian Vance. He always had a plan. "She still loves me," he told himself, the delusion creeping back in like a narcotic. She hesitated at the door. "I saw it. The old man is forcing her to do this. He's controlling her just like he thinks I did. If he could just talk to her. Without the guards. Without the cameras." He fumbled around his desk, looking for his spare burner phone. He found it in the bottom drawer. He turned it on. He didn't have her number, she had probably changed it. But he knew where she would be. The press was reporting that the Grand Duke was at the Mandarin Oriental. He wouldn't go there tonight. That was suicide. No, he needed leverage. He needed something to remind her of who they were before the money, before the fighting. He began tearing the apartment apart. He pulled books off shelves, emptied drawers. Finally, in a shoebox at the back of her closet, the only closet space he had allowed her, he found it. A stack of letters. They were letters she had written to him but never given him. He ripped one open. "My dearest Adrian, today you forgot my birthday. I know you are busy with the merger. I made a cake, but I ate it alone. I wish you could see me, not just the wife who cooks, but the girl who wants to run with you. I love you even when you are blind." Adrian read it, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of remorse, but tears of opportunity. "She loves me," he whispered. "This is it. The simple life narrative." He grabbed the stack of letters. He wasn't going to use them to win her back privately. He was going to use them to win the public. If Alara wanted a war, he would give her one. He would paint himself as the hard-working American husband, and her as the deceptive European royalty who played slumdog for kicks and broke his heart. He dialed a number on the burner phone. "Hello, TMZ tip line. Yes, this is Adrian Vance. I have a story. And I have receipts." Alara woke up to the smell of fresh roses. Her room at the Mandarin was filled with them, hundreds of bouquets. From well-wishers, her personal maid, a stern woman named Greta, whom her grandfather had flown in overnight, said as she opened the curtains, "And suitors." "Suitors?" Alara rubbed her eyes. "It's been 12 hours. You are the sole heiress to the Von Adler fortune, and you are currently separated," Greta said pragmatically. "The vultures are circling, but the Grand Duke has already burned the letters from the French Count and the Italian shipping magnate." Alara got out of bed, putting on a silk robe that cost more than her entire previous wardrobe. She felt different, lighter, but the knot of anxiety in her stomach remained. "Don't turn on the television, Your Highness," Greta warned, moving to block the large flat screen. "Why?" Alara asked, immediately alert. "What did he do?" "Nothing of consequence." Greta lied poorly. Alara grabbed the remote. She clicked on the news. There on every channel was Adrian. He looked disheveled, wearing a simple button-down shirt, sitting in what looked like a diner. He looked broken, humble, and incredibly handsome in a tragic way. The chyron read, "Billionaire heartbreak, the secret princess who lied." "I just don't understand," Adrian was saying to the sympathetic interviewer. He wiped a fake tear from his eye. "I'm just a guy from Queens. I built my company from nothing. I met Alara, and she told me she was a teacher. She told me she was poor. I took care of her. I gave her everything I could." He held up one of the letters, her private letters. "She wrote this," Adrian said, his voice trembling. "She says she loved the simple life. But it was all a game. She was mocking me. Her and her grandfather. They laughed at me. I tried to make her happy, but how can a regular guy compete with an emperor?" The interviewer nodded sympathetically. So you feel you were the victim of a reverse gold digger scheme? Exactly, Adrian said. I'm bankrupt today. They took my company. They took my home. All because I didn't bow low enough. It's un-American. Ilara stared at the screen, her hands shaking. He's reading my letters, my private thoughts. He is a rat, Stefan said from the doorway. He was dressed in a sharp suit, leaning on his cane. And rats squeal when they are trapped. People are believing him, Ilara said, looking at the scrolling ticker at the bottom of the screen. Team Adrian was gaining traction. Royal bully. It does not matter what the sheep think, Stefan said dismissively. We have the law. We have the money. No, Ilara said, turning to him. Her eyes were hard. Grandfather, you don't understand this world. In America, perception is reality. If he paints me as a spoiled princess who ruined a self-made man, I can't do the charity work. I can't live here. I'll be a pariah. Then we leave, Stefan said. Europe is better anyway. I am not running, Ilara shouted. Stefan looked surprised. He hadn't seen this fire in her since she was a child. I am not going to let him steal my voice, Ilara said, pacing the room. He shamed me for being simple. Now he shames me for being royal. He doesn't get to decide who I am. She turned to Greta. Get me a stylist. Get me a camera crew. Not the news. I want my own crew. What are you going to do? Stefan asked, intrigued. I'm going to go on his favorite platform, Ilara said. He likes the spotlight fine. I'm going to turn it up so bright he burns. Yeah, 2 hours later. The setup was simple. Ilara sat in a high-backed chair in the hotel suite, the skyline of New York behind her. She wasn't wearing a tiara. She wasn't wearing rags. She wore a sharp white power suit Armani tailored to perfection. She looked like a CEO, not a princess. She looked into the camera lens. Recording in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Ilara said. Her voice was calm, authoritative. My name is Ilara von Adler. You know me as Adrian Vance's wife. You know me as the woman who hid her title. She leaned forward. Adrian read you a letter today. A letter where I said I wanted a simple life. He forgot to read you the rest of the letters. The ones where I begged him to come home for dinner. The ones where I asked why he fired my friends. The ones where I asked why there were lipstick stains on his collar. She held up a stack of documents. Adrian says he is a self-made man. This is the initial investment log for Vance Global. It shows a $10 million injection from a silent partner in Zurich. That partner was me. I used my trust fund to save his company from bankruptcy 3 months into our marriage. I never told him because I didn't want to bruise his ego. She dropped the papers. They hit the table with a heavy thud. He says I deceived him. I did hide my name because I wanted to know if a man could love Ilara the teacher, not Ilara the princess. Adrian Vance proved that he couldn't even respect Ilara the teacher. He only loved the reflection of himself he saw in my eyes. She stood up. I am not taking his company to be cruel. I am taking it because I own it, and unlike him, I know how to run it without stepping on the people who built it. She looked straight into the lens, her violet eyes piercing. Adrian, if you're watching, the simple girl is gone. The empress is here, and she is done playing games. Cut. The director looked at Ilara wide-eyed. That is going to break the internet, Your Highness. Ilara took a deep breath. She felt her hands trembling, but she clasped them together. Upload it. Ilara's video didn't just break the internet. It shattered the narrative Adrian had so carefully constructed. Within an hour, it had 20 million views. The hashtag the Empress strikes. Back trended globally, replacing the pity for Adrian with righteous fury. Adrian sat in the dim light of a cheap motel room out by JFK Airport. He couldn't afford the city anymore. He watched the view count climb on his cracked phone screen. Every view felt like a physical blow. The revelation about the $10 million injection was devastating. He had built his entire persona around being a self-made titan, and she had just proven he was a charity case propped up by the very woman he mocked. A knock on the door made him jump. It was Camilla. She looked almost as bad as he did. Her designer clothes were rumpled, her makeup smudged. She had been blacklisted in 24 hours. No luxury brand would touch her. No PR firm would hire her. She was toxic. "You fixed it, didn't you?" she spat, throwing her expensive empty purse onto the bed. "You said you'd spin the narrative. Now they're calling us Bonnie and Clyde without the charm." "Shut up, Camilla." Adrian ran a hand through his greasy hair. "I'm thinking. Thinking won't pay my rent. The landlord of my loft just gave me an eviction notice. He said he doesn't want my kind in his building. Do something, Adrian." Adrian looked at her. He didn't see the statuesque beauty he had paraded around the Pierre anymore. He saw a desperate, grasping woman who had cheered him on as he destroyed his marriage. "There's one thing left," Adrian said slowly, a dark idea forming. "The nuclear option." "What? You have nothing." "I have knowledge," Adrian said. "Alara is soft. She talks tough on camera, but inside, she's still the girl who cries over injured birds. We hit her where it hurts. We don't attack her money, we attack her heart." He pulled out a small flash drive from his pocket. "Before they locked me out of the servers, I downloaded some files. Not financial ones, personal ones." Camilla frowned. "What kind of personal files?" "Alara tried to start a literacy charity 2 years ago for underprivileged kids in the Bronx. Remember?" "Vaguely. You told her it was a waste of capital and shut it down." "I did." Adrian smiled cruelly. "But I kept the donor list she had started to compile. Some very sensitive names on there. People who prefer anonymity. If we leak that list and claim Alara was trying to leverage those connections for her family's gain, it gets muddy. The press loves muddy." Camilla looked at the drive. "It's dirty, Adrian. It's desperate." "We are desperate," he snapped. "It's scorched earth, Camilla. If we burn, she burns with us." Yo. Meanwhile, at the Mandarin Oriental, the mood was victorious but tense. Alara was in a strategy meeting with her grandfather's legal team. The table was covered with mahogany wood and serious faces. "The public sentiment is overwhelmingly in your favor, Your Highness," Herr Muller reported, adjusting his spectacles. "However, Mr. Vance is cornered. We anticipate retaliation." "Let him try," Grand Duke Stefan said from the head of the table. He looked energized by the fight, his eyes bright. "We have the forensic accountants finishing their audit of Vance Global today. When that report drops, Adrian won't be worrying about public opinion. He'll be worrying about prison." Alara looked up sharply. "Prison, grandfather, what did you find?" Stefan slid a heavy binder toward her. "Your husband wasn't just incompetent, Alara. He was a thief. He didn't just borrow money he couldn't pay back. He was siphoning funds from the employee pension plan to cover his personal gambling debts in Macau and to buy gifts for his mistresses." Alara opened the binder. Columns of numbers, wire transfers, damning evidence. She felt sick. She remembered the faces of some of the older employees at Adrian's company, men and women who had worked there for 30 years believing their retirement was secure. "He stole from them," Alara whispered, "to buy what watches trips with Camilla." "Among other things," Stefan said disgustedly. "This is why we do not marry beneath our station, Alara. The common man lacks the moral fiber to handle power." "Don't," Alara said sharply, closing the binder with a snap that silenced the room. "Don't turn this into a class sermon, grandfather. There are plenty of decent poor men and plenty of rotten royals. Adrian is a bad man. That is all." Stefan raised an eyebrow but nodded slowly. "As you wish. We release this to the district attorney tomorrow morning." "No," Alara said, standing up. She walked to the window, looking out over the city that felt less like a home and more like a battlefield. "We release it to the press tonight, before the DA gets it. I want everyone to know exactly who he is." "That is aggressive," Herr Muller noted cautiously. It could prejudice a trial. I don't care about his trial, Ilara said, turning back to them. Her voice was ice cold. He tried to shame me for wearing an old dress. He tried to gaslight the world into thinking I was a villain. He doesn't get a quiet slide into obscurity. He gets total public annihilation. The Grand Duke smiled. It was a terrifying smile. My blood, he murmured proudly. The nuclear option Adrian had banked on was a dud. He sat in his cramped motel room, refreshing the page, waiting for the outrage over Ilara's charity list to sweep the internet. But the internet was already burning, and the fire was consuming him. 10 minutes prior, at Ilara's command, the forensic audit of Vance Global had gone live. The headline on CNN was not about a princess hiding her title. It was Vance Global CEO siphoned millions from employee pension fund. The world didn't care that Ilara had used royal connections to help orphans. They cared that Adrian Vance had stolen the retirement savings of truck drivers and warehouse workers to fund his gambling debts in Macau. A heavy pounding shook the flimsy motel door. Federal agents, open up! Adrian scrambled back against the headboard, the flash drive clattering to the floor. He didn't even have time to stand before the door was kicked in. Men in windbreakers marked FBI swarmed the room. There were no cameras, no fanfare, just the cold, hard click of handcuffs tightening around his wrists. As they dragged him out into the flashing red and blue lights, Adrian caught a glimpse of himself in the motel mirror. He didn't look like a misunderstood genius. He looked like exactly what the Grand Duke had called him, a small boy, playing with coins he didn't own. Across the city, the atmosphere in the penthouse was electric. Champagne corks popped as the legal team celebrated the news of Adrian's arrest. But Ilara stood by the window, feeling a strange hollowness. The war was over. She had won. But the silence left behind was deafening. It is done, Grand Duke Stefan said, walking up behind her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. The Vance name is mud. The company is ours to dismantle. I don't want to dismantle it, Ilara said softly, turning to him. The workers, they didn't do anything wrong. I want to save it. I want to turn it into something good. Stefan smiled, a look of immense pride softening his iron features. Then do it. You are the... He never finished the sentence. The color suddenly drained from his face. His hand slipped from her shoulder, clutching at his chest. The cane hit the floor with a terrifying clatter, followed by the heavy thud of his body. Grandfather! Ilara screamed, dropping to her knees. The room erupted into chaos. Security shouted for medics. The celebration turned into a nightmare. Stefan's breathing was shallow, his eyes unfocused. For 3 years, Ilara had relied on his strength. Even in this war against Adrian, he had been her shield. Now the shield was shattered. Don't leave me, she whispered, gripping his cold hand as the paramedics rushed in. I'm not ready. Stefan's eyes fluttered open for a split second. He looked at her not with pity, but with expectation. He squeezed her hand weakly. You are ready, the look said. Hours later, in the sterile silence of the VIP waiting room at New York Presbyterian, Ilara stood alone. The doctors had stabilized him, but the recovery would be long. The Iron Eagle was grounded. Her phone buzzed. It was Herr Muller. Your Highness, the lawyer said gently. The press is outside the hospital. The board of directors is panicking. They are asking who is in charge of the Adler estate while the Duke is incapacitated. They are asking if they should liquidate everything and retreat to Austria. Ilara looked at the closed door of her grandfather's room. She thought of Adrian rotting in a cell because he was too weak to carry the weight of his own ego. She touched the signet ring on her finger. No, Ilara said, her voice steady and steel hard. We do not retreat. Draft the papers, Herr Muller. I am assuming full control of the Adler holdings effective immediately. And tell the press I will be down in 5 minutes. She hung up the phone. She walked to the bathroom mirror and splashed cold water on her face. The girl who had hidden in a beige cardigan was gone. The woman staring back had eyes of violet fire. She straightened her blazer, lifted her chin, and walked out of the room to claim her empire. 6 months later, the spring gala for the Adler Foundation was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was the event of the season. Everyone who was anyone wanted a ticket. Ilara stood at the top of the grand staircase. She was wearing a dress of simple white silk. It wasn't vintage. It was new, designed by a young unknown student she had met in Brooklyn. It had no diamonds, no flash. It was elegant, understated, and effortlessly powerful. She wore the signet ring not hidden under her dress, but on her finger where it belonged. The crowd below buzzed with anticipation. They weren't waiting for a scandalous trophy wife. They were waiting for Ilara von Adler, the woman who had crushed a corrupt billionaire, saved thousands of pensions, and reorganized a global logistics firm in under half a year, all while overseeing the care of her recovering grandfather. As the music swelled and she began to descend the stairs, the cameras flashed. But this time the light didn't blind her. She looked straight into it, clear-eyed and unafraid. Adrian had called her cheap because she didn't need adornments to feel valuable. He hadn't understood that the most precious things are often the simplest. A clean conscience, a loyal heart, the quiet strength of knowing exactly who you are. She reached the bottom of the stairs and took the microphone. The room fell instantly silent out of respect, not fear. "Thank you all for coming," Ilara said, her voice clear and warm, filling the massive hall. "We have a lot of work to do tonight." She smiled a genuine, simple smile, and in that moment she was the most powerful person in New York. It's easy to mistake kindness for weakness and simplicity for a lack of worth. Adrian Vance learned that lesson the hard way. True power isn't about how loudly you can shout or how much gold you wear. It's about who shows up when the walls come crashing down. If you enjoyed this story of karma delivering a royal smackdown, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And let me know in the comments, what was the best part of Adrian's downfall? Until next time.